Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And right before this reset happened, Blizzard did a massive amount of changes to the classes in PvE and PvP. And obviously, I wanted to update my tier list to keep it relevant so you can see how the specializations are measuring up and my expectations for them in terms of performance for Solo Shuffle. And if you want to make sure that you're not missing any of those changes and updates and entertaining content, then make sure to smash the subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. But let's get started. So I've broken this tier list down. We've got God tier, S tier, A plus, A, B, and C. And the reason it only goes to C is because I think most specs are, you can play them in Shuffle. They're not like a failure level in terms of performance, but you will notice a gap between each one of these tiers for the specializations. The first one here is Affliction Warlock. Affliction Warlock is actually benefiting a bit from these changes. I think with Mistweaver getting nerfed significantly, a lot of Mistweavers think that it's like Doomsday. It's probably going to feel significantly weaker. I don't know if it's completely Doomsday, though. You're definitely not a Holy Priest still. But you benefit from Mistweaver nerfs. You also benefit from Demon Hunter nerfs. And you benefit from Beast Mastery Hunter nerfs. So you do definitely benefit this patch. But in Solo Shuffle, the main problem with Affliction is that you have no closing crowd control. You can get like a Mortal Coil or something, but it's like 99% of the time, you got to hope that your team can live long enough that your damage can just kind of like overwhelm the team and kill them. And if that doesn't happen, it's going to feel pretty rough. And I think because of those reasons, I'm putting it on kind of like B tier as opposed to the higher tiers. If you had something like Instant Shadow Fury, it might help you out in terms of being able to like stop a critical heal at a moment or get a CC on a healer while you're being attacked because you can stun the DPS off yourself and cast a fear. You just lack the ability to get situations where you can close the game. Oblivion is like basically your only way, and if healers are aware of it, they can counter it pretty easily. So Affliction, I don't think is going to feel spectacularly strong. Arcane Mage, they're bug fixing your set bonus, so you are likely going to feel a little bit weaker today, but you're probably still going to be one of the best mage specs for the bracket specifically. I mean, we saw it in the Shuffle tournament. Nobody played Fire. There was a couple of Frost mages, didn't have great performances. I think Arcane can perform as well as Frost in the situations where Frost performs well, but also perform in other environments. So Arcane, it's likely going to feel, I think, significantly better. I'm putting it up onto A+. Arms Warrior, now you're directly competing with Fury, and honestly, Fury looks pretty scary with the buffs that are coming through for it. It's making me regret getting haste gear on my Warrior to go Arms after giving up on Fury. I kind of wish that I didn't. Maybe I can correct that. Depends on what the vault gives me today. You can watch me live on my stream. It's linked in the description down below. Arms Warrior, it's kind of a tough fit for me. I feel like you get kited really hard in a lot of situations. You're also randomly, I feel like you're actually squishier than Rogues. We even saw it in the tournament, like Magnus getting taken down by Rogues and Rogues looking immortal and going completely undefeated. Like, Arms Warrior is actually surprisingly one of the easiest melee to kill, regardless of if you're a caster or a melee. So I think because of its limited defense and its mobility, it's coming in on an A tier. I still think it has a great, well-rounded toolkit, and you have great synergies with a lot of classes in the game, which is likely going to carry you forward, and your damage is quite high, and your set bonuses are good. So I think an A tier is pretty solid for you, and it's pretty straightforward to play, but it does have situations where it's going to feel weaker than other options. Assassination Rogue, I gave this a lower ranking than probably where it should have been previously, but it is now getting nerfed, although it is very slightly. I think it's mostly just targeting Kingsbane Burst. Assassination is kind of sleeper. Again, one of the reasons I think that it's not, subtlety rogue level is because it doesn't have basically almost unending vanish charges. Its defense is a lot more limited, and I feel like it'll feel very similar to where Arms is, and honestly play probably pretty similar, where you're like blind the healer, fear the healer, get into the kill target, stormbolt the kill target, try and max out as much bleed damage as you can, and they're gonna have like a very similar play style and likely a very similar performance in Solo Shuffle in that regard. Maybe even Assassination is slightly squishier in Shuffle, but I would imagine they're gonna feel pretty similar in power. Balance Druid, it's my expectation that this is still going to be God tier specialization. I think that it's just got great synergy with everything in the game. You can play with melee DPS, range DPS. You have Cyclone. You got really good damage. 2-minute Incarn timer is really strong. It's just really strong right now. I'm putting it up here, and people keep telling me like, why do you keep putting Boomkin at the top? It's like, because Boomkin is actually really good. It's just if you're new to this spec, you're probably going to struggle, especially in a situation where you're dealing with melee DPS, which is why I would recommend that you check out my Moonkin guides, which can help you with that, so you can realize the power that can be unlocked with this specialization. But when it's fully unlocked, and that's how I'm measuring this, right? Like, how powerful are these specializations when they're fully unlocked by somebody, and what can they possibly do in the game? Because that's, ultimately what is possible with the game. I think Boomkin will feel like God tier. Beast Mastery Hunter is probably going to fall off a bit. Now, how hard? It's really tough to say, so I would have put it on S or maybe even God. I think S is probably more adequate given its performance in the tournament that we witnessed over the weekend. I think A+ is also still likely going to be a pretty secure location for it. It's really easy to play, just does a bunch of damage, and it's all easy to do damage. Now, as people get better at the game and realize they can crowd control your pets when you're popping Wild Call and stuff like that, you might feel a little bit weaker in those environments. And obviously the damage nerf maybe is enough to shove it down here. I don't know, honestly. Maybe it's safer to put BM here on A in the middle, where it's like closer to coming down to B. I'm mostly putting it a little bit higher just because it's really easy to do well on. But again, it's possible skill cap. I could see if its damage isn't there, it's going to struggle a bit. Blood Death Knight, it's kind of tough to rank. It actually, I think it's getting a little bit of a nerf, although I think somebody corrected me, it was the previous set bonus that got nerfed on it. Tanks are going to be really hard to do well with in solo shuffle no matter what they are. It's just really hard to get rating, so I'm kind of putting the tanks at the bottom. If you're somebody who wants to like focus on getting rating and climbing for rewards, tank specs you're probably going to want to avoid. If you're looking to cheese a rank 1 title, then you could use a tank spec and try and cheese a Crimson Legend, because not a lot of people play competitively on them. But getting really high rating is going to be really hard on pretty much any tank spec. Demonology is getting very significant nerfs, although it's a little bit compensated buffs. Your Doom Fiend's going to be doing a bit more damage, but that's a little bit unreliable. They're shifting damage away into cast speed to melee attack speed, which means your melee pets can get kited a little bit more. You're still going to be the tankiest lock spec, and I think that's one of the main advantages of Demonology. So I'm still keeping you on A+. I still think that you synergize with a lot of classes, and because you have MS, that's really beneficial. It's still, especially in uncoordinated and solo shuffle where people don't necessarily CC your pets all the time correctly, you can get away with a lot. And I think it's just mostly the tankiness as to why you're an A+ as opposed to Affliction. But it's also the lockdown, right? You've got Axe Toss and Coil, and you can set up conditions that end the game. That Affliction is just kind of like, yeah, I did a bunch of damage, but the healer isn't CC'd perfectly. They're going to deal with it pretty effectively. And if the game doesn't go long enough for dampening, you can't close out the game. So Demonology is better closing, and it's going to be a little bit tankier. Destruction Warlock, I think, is going to be spectacular now. I still think I'm putting it on A+ rather than S. Main reason is squishiness to melee DPS, but its damage is going to be rock star high, especially now with the changes to the 4-set bonus. I'm going to need to get that on mine. It's going to be pumping up bigger numbers than Demonology, but it's also squishier in my mind. Similar weaknesses. The double Mortal Coil is also nice on like Affliction, so where you can get double Mortal Coil to peel both melee off yourself. Double Infernal Stun. I think the Infernal is also one of the big deals, because the Infernal will remove the ability to interrupt your Shadow Fury and then sets up into your coil. So you've got this instant stun that lets you get a chain of stuns to actually get your casts off, whereas Affliction is like, you got one single coil, which means the other DPS is still interacting with you, which means you're probably not going to get the Shadow Fury, and it's really tough to coordinate that. So the instant stuns on these are definitely bumping them up in terms of level from Affliction for me, because Affliction can pump up bigger numbers than these guys, and in some lobbies it will probably perform better than them, but it's very specific, whereas these guys are going to be more well-rounded, and you got to take the overall when you're considering the strength of a spec. Devastation, you're getting some damage buffs, but you're still very, very weak to Subtlety Rogue and kind of burst damage like that. And it's my expectation that that's not, even with the nerfs that happen to Subtlety, that's not really going anywhere. It's probably going to feel kind of mid. I think mostly just defensively it's going to feel mid. It has decent crowd control, sleepwalk, moving around, landslide routes. But most of the time I just see it dying through its defensive cooldowns. You got getting a stamina buff. Maybe it's a little better than this. Yeah, I'll give it a little bit better than that. I'll give it a little bit better than that for right now. But the limited range puts you in really bad spots a lot of the times, whereas like these other casters, you can kind of just chill, kite, and be safe most of the time. You got to get really close to the game to get your damage. I mean, Deep Breath requires you to fly in to hit the target, so positional limitations of it compared to other ranged are definitely going to hinder it. Discipline Priest with the Resto Druid nerfs and the Mistweaver nerfs. I think Disc Priest, we want to put it on God tier. I kind of want to put it on S. Yeah, we'll put it on God. I think Disc Priest is definitely going to be... It got like a very minor nerf to it, which compensated a little bit by the 4-set bonus buff. If you play that build, I don't play the Shadow Covenant build, but Disc Priest is really fun right now and really strong right now. And as long as you're like preemptive with your cooldowns and paint something early, you can keep your team very stable and do a lot of damage, and you're going to be very valuable for that, and it's a lot of fun. So it's definitely powerful. Ellie Shaman... This is a tough one to rank because in the tournament it didn't do very well, but in the tournament some of the Ellies also didn't have their 4-set bonuses. So I'm seeing ladder play where Ellies are doing 100k plus DPS, and it's because they have a 4-set bonus that they didn't have in the tournament for a lot of them. I think it's probably only fair though to put it on the same tier as Arcane, given that its performance was very similar in that regard. I don't know if it's better than Demo. We'll put it over here. We'll put Arcane a little bit over as well. Remember, left to right is what I think in terms of strength, and compare melee to melee and range to ranged. Yeah, maybe down here. But when you're sub bonus, you're doing an insane amount of damage. Enhancements, getting some nice buffs to Lava Lash, which are certainly going to help. But still, your main problem is that you don't have great synergy. I mean, we didn't even see anybody want to sign up as Enhanced in the Solo Shuffle tournament. You just don't have good synergies with casters. There's more bad lobbies than not. You kite it around. I think its comp limitations are really its issue. So if the Lava Lash build isn't like extraordinarily good, so you have sustained damage, I'm kind of putting it down here. I think it's not gonna have too great of a run. I think it's mostly just class synergy issues. Feral Druid. Now, Feral Druid, aside from the regrowth buffs, is still going to be pretty defensively weak, so it's probably going to still kind of feel similar to Warrior and Assassination. I think, though, having Cyclone and abusing Cyclone is going to feel really good. You have really good cleave damage. You're probably going to feel a similar boat here in terms of defense, and maybe slightly higher in terms of damage output with your AoE damage. So I'm putting a little ahead of Warrior, a little ahead of Assassination Rogue. Again, squishiness is main reason it's not like going up into the next tier. That's like the main difference between this or then up here. Fire Mage, you can stay max range and spam Fireball and do a bunch of damage, kite around the map, and make it work. But again, I think it's going to have bad lobbies where you feel like you can't do anything, like Hunters and Shaman, Resto Shamans, and even Ellie Shamans. And there's going to be more of those now with the buffs to Resto Shamans and Ellie Shamans already being prominent, and Warlock specs. I could see Fire Mage really having a tough time, and it has historically had a tough time in Shuffle, and given those changes coming through, that's likely probably going to remain true. It's probably better than Affliction, though, just because all its damage is instant. Dragon's Breath can set up crowd control more guaranteed than Affliction has in terms of finding crowd control. So I could definitely see it performing better than that. Frost Mage, very similar to Arcane. I'm putting it up here just a little bit behind Arcane. Maybe we put it here. Again, you can get bad lobbies, but Arcane has the same bad lobbies. I think it's very similar. It's very close, and really, so tough to discern that it's like probably like this. I'd say maybe Arcane has a slight edge, but Frost is easier to play because it's almost, with the Glacial Spike build, it's not really all instant anymore, is it? So it's very close, definitely very close to Arcane, but likely still going to be really good. He's going to be really good in these melee classes. Yeah, I think Arcane and Frost. I mean, we saw so many people signing up with these specs in the tournament that it would be wrong to say that they're not, strong options. But we also did see a lot of mages re-rolling Boomkin, which again, why I'm putting it up here. But some of those re-rolls didn't do well because you got to also play well to do well on it. Frost Death Knight, some people think that this spec is really good. Again, I think much like Enhance is like you don't have a lot of spec synergy. Like you need classes that clump people together in AoE burst, and that's like your ideal situation. And if you don't get those, then it can feel a little bit more frustrating. Obviously, the step bonus to Chill Streak yourself is nice. It helps that a bit, but it's still basically 2-target cleave is your niche. And it's really tough to achieve that. And with class synergies, like I think it's probably going to come down here. Maybe even Enhance is slightly better than Frost, but I think it's probably going to be coming a little bit lower. Again, it's Frost damage is still really good. Obliterate still hits really hard, but I think with spec synergy that you can get a lot of situations that are really tilting with this. Now, Fury Warrior, this is a really tough one because this guy's getting the most buffs of anybody, and a lot of Warriors didn't even have their 4-set bonus. Coming in to get their 4-set bonus, lower cooldown Odins, big Bloodthirst hits. I could see Fury Warrior doing really well now with the amount of damage that it can put out, and it's going to be really good into Warlocks. Problem for it, again, is like Ellie Shamans and Mages and kiting it. I think its defense is a little bit better than this row, though. in terms of tankiness. It's a bit easier to survive on the spec. Main problem is removing things like Curse of Weakness. You can run a talent, I'm forgetting the name of it. It's like a 3-minute cooldown that removes curses. You pretty much have to run that into Warlocks to remove Curse of Weakness, because Curse of Weakness is just going to like totally neuter you, or amp Curse of Exhaustion, and you're just snared forever. I think Fury is probably going to feel really good though, given the damage buffs that are happening to it, with the set bonuses that it has. Guardian Druid, again, tank specs, probably not the best idea. Demon Hunter, the next like major spec that everybody wants to know, like how's it going to be doing? I think that if you were like an average or subpar Demon Hunter that suddenly jumped up 1,000 rating this season, you're probably going to lose 1,000 rating. But if you're a master Demon Hunter, that it's probably still going to end up in a similar position. Demon Hunters that are good at pre-glimpsing, pre-blurring, and getting their in-cap fears secured and lining up their cooldowns to do burst damage, you're probably still going to feel fine. I think you're probably still going to feel S, but not God. And mostly just because the specs that are in God are going to, kite you really well, cyclone you, root you, kill you in stuns like Sub-Rogue. I still think you're probably still going to be really good because you're really versatile with a lot of classes. Damage is still going to be really high. But if you were one of the, the average Demon Hunters that suddenly jumped up 1,000 rate, you're probably going to notice a big drop. Holy Priest, I wish that I put a tier lower than C, actually. Holy Priest is so bad. You just run out of mana faster than everybody, do less damage than everybody. Your healing output is lower than everybody. And yeah, Holy Priest just got totally rocked on this. It's just, even with the minor buff that it got, it's just not keeping pace with the other healers. It's gonna be a miserable experience. Don't put yourself through it. Holy Paladin, now I think Holy Paladin is definitely really good, actually. I'm putting it up here into A plus potentially is where I want to put it. Yeah, I think I'm going to put it on A plus. You just have really good mana, really solid kit overall. You carry games by playing Repentance and going for like Hammer Justice Repentance and keeping damage going out. And you have big cooldown trades, and one of the main benefits of it is that you're really good into rogues, and honestly pretty good into warriors as well. And warriors are getting a little bit better, and rogues are obviously one of the best specs, the best spec in the game. So if you get situations like that, you're going to feel really strong compared to other healers. Yeah, Holy Paladin's in a really good spot. Marksmanship Hunter, you're not in a really good spot. They're buffing your defense slightly, but you lost so much damage, it feels like. I'm honestly wondering where the hunters are going to go, because I feel like you're down here. Maybe here. Like somewhere there, like a B or a C. Pretty low. Most of the hunters just jumped off marksman right away on a BM, and now BM might be like a jump ship situation, and it's like you're gonna stuck with survival. Survival is pretty good, but it wasn't as good as marksman at the beginning or BM previously to its nerf. So hunter specs overall are feeling a lot weaker. Probably down here, even with the defense buffs to it. The damage is like noticeably lower, and we're getting a lot more plate classes that are good, like Fury Warrior, higher armor classes like Moonkin. I could see it definitely falling off here. Mistweaver Monk, you're definitely going to feel the nerfs. Now, how much are you going to feel them? Probably depends on how good of a Mistweaver you were. I'm still kind of putting it up here on A or A+. It's very similar to Holy Paladin with its positioning in cap. Song of Chi-Ji's great crowd control chain as a healer. We saw Meat Monk win the tournament on Mistweaver. That's obviously prior to the nerfs, but it has a pretty well-rounded kit. It has nice ways to outplay subtly rogues like pre-disarm, Ring of Peace, like trying to anticipate different attack moves like that, which is really nice. And its output is likely still going to be really high. It's going to be really good into these dot casters as well, which are likely still going to remain powerful. You struggle though with burst classes like Salty Rogue and Mage, but Hunter's falling off, so Freezing Trap and stuff, crowd control chains like that are probably going to feel a bit weaker. So I think it's probably somewhere here. It's tough to say. I think Paladin's probably better, which is why I'm putting it on the left. Do note that again, if the specs on the left for your role, I think you're better than the ones on the right. Outlaw Rogue, this is again really sleeper spec. I think that if you're really good at this spec, that it is absolutely going to perform well for you. But if you're not good at it, you're going to feel really weak on it. So some specs are like that, but the top level potential of this spec is definitely really high. And we didn't see really any significant nerfs for it moving into this patch, so it's probably going to be also a lot more notable here. Preservation Evoker, I don't think is actually as bad as Holy Priest, but I definitely think it's bad. Compromising your position, you get swapped to you. It seems very easy to kill Preservation Evoker at the moment. So they are buffing its Dream heals, so it's like maybe this bumps up to an A, but I still think it's going to be a gap between the rest of the healers. So whether it's here or here, you're still going to feel lower than the other healers that are above it. So I'm giving it a lower ranking. Prot Warrior, again, probably want to avoid tanks because it's really tough to just get rating on them in general. Prot Paladin, same deal. Resto Shaman. Now this one got a lot of changes. Set bonus buffs, nerfs to other healers that made it weak. It's really good into these casters that are really strong. This is such a hard one as to whether considering how badly it did in the tournament, right? It's like, are the changes enough that like it can actually compete? I'm putting it in like the middle where I think like it's probably getting very close to the same, but maybe it's safer to put it here still. Again, I think the reason I'll put it here is because in shuffle with no comms, coordinating your defensive cooldowns is really difficult. Like people run out of your earthen wall, they run out of range you want to link, and I think those like limitations on how your defensive cooldowns interact with low coordination compared to these guys, like you just press bop, you just press cocoon, it's guaranteed, doesn't really require a lot of comms. I think that's why you'll feel like it's slightly weaker in shuffle, but it's definitely getting closer. Like at the highest level, it's getting closer. But even there, I think you have to cast more than these healers as well, other than Mistweaver. If you're playing cast Mistweaver, but cast more than Paladin, cast more than Druid. If you cast on Priest, you got other schools of magic. Resto Shaman doesn't have that. I think it's probably going to feel a little bit weaker. Resto Druid, I don't know if the Mastery nerf is enough to take it down. The set bonus nerf also, I don't know if it's enough. Like that set bonus healed so much. Like even a 50% nerf to it, I don't even know. I think you're just going to need to make sure that you have more mastery on your gear to compensate for losing mastery, unfortunately. I'm putting it here on like A+ around with Holy Paladin, Mistweaver, and Resto Druid. I mean, we saw these healers going up head-to-head in the tournament even before the nerfs and they were getting close. So, I think that it'll probably just continue to feel close. It's got good healing output for no comms, good cooldowns that are just instant activated and stuff like that. So yeah, I think Resto Druid will probably still feel just fine. Retribution Paladin, where do we want to put this one? Like I honestly think red is here, but it just depends on what bracket you get, right? Like if you get a lot of wizard lobbies, it's gonna be really tough. You can still do well in small maps when you get those lobbies, which again makes that coin flip a little bit more friendly. I really want to put it either A+ or S. I'm definitely putting it above these guys. Just based off the tournament performance that we saw and like the changes that are coming through, it's definitely above them. But I could see like, you know, these guys, you're not really gonna feel like you get a bad lobby unless you get a sub rogue, and everyone feels like it's a bad lobby when you get a sub rogue. So it's not really, you can't really make that comparison. But Ret will feel more challenging than these guys probably in these wizard situations. So I think it's fair, but I think it's better than Fury. Shadow Priest, we saw WizK making it into the finals. And like almost winning, coming very close. I think he DC'd actually. He probably would have actually came at least second over the Subtlety Rogue. So it's definitely not bad. Like as much as people want to try and like make it seem like it's bad, it's definitely not bad, but it's definitely harder to do well. Harder to do well, but not bad. I think it's probably fair to be putting it like up here. So up here in the A+, maybe even close to the S. If you're running Siphene in a lot of situations, you'd be really good at countering boomkins and things like that. I think A+ is probably more fair for it though. Subtlety Rogue, I mean, this is obvious. We don't even need to talk about it. The nerfs that are going to it are like a tickle. It's mostly that its defense needs to be adjusted. Now the cooldown reduction is definitely, I'm interested to see how that plays out, but I still think like we're watching rogues just run into entire enemy teams after they trinket cloaked and not getting punished. So it's probably going to still feel really good just because at the highest level, that when you know how to get your setups and get your burst off, it just seems like it has limitless damage and it's borderline, it's just unkillable. So they need to target its defense more and maybe try and somehow attempt to make it more new player friendly in terms of damage. But then at that point, you're like breaking its identity. So it's really tough, but it's definitely going to be a strong spec. Survival Hunter is probably going to be, somewhere in here. I feel like you're probably tankier than a lot of these classes. I mean, we saw Big Mix make it into the finals on Survival, and I feel like you're going to be better than BM now and better than Marksman. So probably best of the A tier, moving into like A+, but obviously we saw it struggle in certain lobbies where it couldn't keep up with the damage output of other classes that were in its bracket. On Holy Death Knight, I wish that we had one in the competition because I actually still think the spec is really good. Even despite the nerfs, I think it's still really good. It's just got a solid amount of damage, more sustain oriented than Frost, which is the main reason why I think Frost is down here and Unholy is up here. It's just the archetype, and it surprisingly works pretty well with a lot of different classes. It can peel for casters, spam Chains of Ice. Yeah, but I mean, maybe Fury Warrior getting better might result in it feeling weaker. So it's probably somewhere between S and A, but it's definitely still really good. Vengeance Demon Hunter. Now, this is actually a spec. It's such a good tank spec that I'm actually putting it higher than the tanks. This thing plays like a Subtlety Rogue. Subtlety Rogue is tank spec. This is a tank spec with a lot of CC. They're very similar. Vengeance Demon Hunter, if you're going to play a tank, that would definitely have to be it. Windwalker Monk, you do insane damage. I'm putting you into the A+. I think your defense is better than these specs, and you do insane damage. You just bowl people over. So definitely into the A+. And Augmentation Evoker, not good. It's definitely been a struggle. Augmentation Evoker has fallen off really hard since the changes, has limitations of devastation, but just doesn't have the output, it seems like. If you have certain comps like Demon Hunter, Aug might be able to do well, but it's noticeably feels weaker, and we didn't see anything that's making me think otherwise. I think we saw eruption damage buff or something, but I don't see that kind of adjusting where it is at the moment. And these are kind of my thoughts. Just wanted to run you through, keep you guys up to date with everything that's going on as far as the current patch is concerned, and we'll keep it running as long as there are changes going through. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.